Welcome to Sprint Demos, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at Sprint 44, Fleet 4.72.0, codename Ruthenium. Agenda, we demo features from each product group, then list improvements and bug fixes. We always read the user story aloud first before showing it, before the demo, and explain why it's important to customers. We always show where the documentation for the feature lives during the demo. We include a list of bug fixes and improvements, but only demo if there's an important change. And with that, going to hand off to George and the MDM group for their features.
Alrighty, we've got one short, succinct little demo video for a fun new feature coming to Fleet. And I'll share my screen here.
Hi, we're going to do a quick demo of enrolling personally owned iOS and iPadOS devices with work email. This feature is also known as account-based user enrollment in some of the Apple documentation. Our user story here is, as an IT admin, I want my end users to enroll their personal iPhones and iPads through the Settings app by signing in with my work email so that I can enforce settings necessary to access organization resources and tools. And so with this feature, I'm going to be able to take an iPhone that is a personal iPhone. It's not in ADE or anything like that. And I'm going to be able to enroll it in my Fleet server with a user enrollment so that certain work settings can be enforced and organization resources can be deployed to that phone without having to manage the entire phone, and also in a way that preserves user privacy. It doesn't allow the organization to access any of the user's personal information or manage any of their personal apps. And we'll be demoing this on an iPhone. So I'm going to go into the Settings app. This is just General, and then VPN and Device Management. I'll go to Sign in to Work or School account. So I'll enter my credentials. My iPhone will contact Apple and then my Fleet server, and then it will contact Okta, which is my end user authentication IDP, the same one that's used during DEP enrollment. So I'm going to put in that same username. I'll enter a code from the Okta Verify app. And then once I have completed a login on my IDP, I am redirected back to this iCloud sign-in. At this point, my iOS device has actually received a profile from the Fleet server, and that was authenticated by that SSO login, and this profile is locked to this single managed Apple account. So I'm going to put in the credentials for that account. I'll hit continue, and then we're presented with this very familiar remote management screen. And this screen is, it's telling me that managed apps will be able to be installed and configured by my organization, but that the organization will not have access to my personal content. I'll hit allow. It requires me to enter my passcode, and it's going to go through the usual MDM enrollment process. While it's doing that, we'll take a look here back at the Fleet server. And once it completes that enrollment, so here's my new device in Fleet. It is still enrolling. On the device, it's going to ask if I want to restore because I've enrolled this device before. And you can see now I have this managed Apple account on here. I'll refetch this device just to speed things up a little bit. But you can see that it shows up as an iPhone. It has an enrollment ID instead of a serial number. This is randomly generated. The Fleet server will never receive the serial number of the device here due to Apple's privacy protections. The MDM status shows as on personal, and I'm limited as far as which actions I can perform. If I go to OS settings, I've got the usual Fleet root CA, and I have my mail account installed. And on the device, I can actually show you that company mail account. You can see it affects the mail and the notes apps, and these are just the default settings from the Apple example for the mail account. And I've got this home screen layout, which is still not enforced, and if I refresh, it's now failed. And it's failed because it's not supported on this type of enrollment. You can see this error here. Payload cannot be installed via user enrollment. There are some payloads like this, so Apple only allows a subset to be sent to these types of devices. Additionally, as far as software, you can see I don't see any of the apps on the phone here because Apple does not allow us to see a user's personal apps. As you install managed apps, those will show up in this inventory. However, for the current iteration of this feature, VPP app installation is not supported. That will be coming soon, along with some new functionality as far as VPP goes, because as I mentioned, this device is not really a device. There is no serial number, and so app installations and licensing are tied to the users for these devices rather than the devices themselves. So that is this new functionality. It's been a true team effort. It's required a number of team members to coordinate throughout this cycle. One additional thing that if you're familiar with this feature, you'll know that one way of setting it up requires changing your company's website. So I logged into fleetdm.com. It would require you adding a special little file under the fleetdm.com HTTP route, which would point devices to your Fleet server, your other MDM solution. We have opted here at Fleet to actually implement the newer ABM service discovery or Apple School Manager service discovery feature, so that your Fleet server syncs the information about the proper endpoints to use for these BYOD enrollments to Apple Business Manager, and then Apple Business Manager, when you go to log in to, for instance, I logged into a FleetDM managed Apple account, then serves the URL specified by whatever server is set as the default enrollment target for that type of devices. And so, you know, for iPhones, for instance, I have set that as my Fleet server, and so there was no change to the corporate website required to make this demo or anything like that. It simply required setting my Fleet server as the default assignment and logging into a managed Apple account. So thank you very much.
All right, and that concludes the new features for MDM. Are there any questions?
That's super cool. I got one question. Is this a single work or school account per device, or is it possible to set up like multiple managed accounts on a device?
I don't think we've ever seen multiple. Brock, do you have any answers on
Well,
that
I mean,
one?
there is a concept of shared iPad, which is like
Yeah.
a thing that's a classroom thing for like that set of iPads belong to the room and not to the students. I don't think there's any concept outside of that in the MDM spec.
All righty, then that's it. Back to you, Luke.
Cool. Thank you, MDM. And that's a great looking setup experience and onboarding flow for iOS users. Over to Sharon and orchestration for their features.
Thank you, Luke. Happy Friday, everyone. We will start with a request from an important customer. I'll start by saying that TLS communication is encrypted both sides, but the agent, the client, knows that the server is authentic, but vice versa doesn't happen. The server doesn't know that all clients are really authentic. So this customer requested that we will do a double-sided signatures, something like MTLS, and Victor and Lucas worked on it in the last sprint. Lucas will present it, so I'll hand it over to you, Lucas.
All right.
Okay, so as a security engineer, I want to deploy a Fleet D agent for Linux and have Fleet D get a host certificate so that hosts have to generate a signature tied to their hardware TPM to communicate with the Fleet server. So this feature, we originally, Victor implemented a POC on the previous sprint. And then like Victor probably did like 90% of the work here. And then what I did this sprint is basically put the pieces together on the Fleet D side. So kudos to Victor. I'm not gonna be as good as him on demo, but I'll try my best here. So this is an improved method of authentication. Currently, we use node keys, which are secure, but this is even more secure because it's signatures tied to a TPM. That means that only that TPM can generate like valid requests to the Fleet server. Even if you take some kind of key material out of the device, it will be useless. So also Victor created this beautiful guide. I'm gonna go through it real quick to explain like at a high level what this is. So again, it's like improved security for authentication. And mostly like this looks like this. So you have a host, like every device, modern device has a TPM hardware in it, and usually implements a 2.0 version of the specification. And we have the Fleet D agent running on the device. And what will happen is during enrollment, it will first obviously generate a new like a private key and public key. And it will store the private key encrypted on a file on the file system. The same with the public key that's on clear text. And it will be basically encrypted with a key on the TPM. So that file, you can take it elsewhere. You won't be able to decrypt it because only the TPM can decrypt it. That's the main part here. Then the Fleet D agent will request a certificate. So we implemented a new SCEP endpoint for generating certificates. This is separate from the MDM SCEP endpoint. Basically the same protocol, it's just a separate endpoint to keep things separate. And again, Fleet D will request a certificate, we'll get one. And from that point onwards, every request has to be signed by the TPM. Otherwise, if depending on configuration, Fleet server will reject the request. So I'm not gonna go over like the details, but this is kind of the SCEP protocol, how it works. It involves TPM, Orbit, and OS Query. One important part is that we have OS Query and Orbit. So we implemented this in a way that doesn't require any code changes in OS Query because all the traffic from OS Query to Fleet will go through Orbit. It's like we're proxying all the traffic through Orbit. Then Orbit acts as a middle man in the middle, and then we'll sign every request coming from Orbit and send it to the Fleet server. So this was a great thing because again, we don't require any code changes in OS Query. So let me demo this real quick. I have, for example, well, this is my device. Obviously, it can't connect because I'm on a Mac, and I have the setting in Fleet. So let me see. If you run with this setting on the Fleet server, it will only allow traffic that is signed. So obviously my Mac cannot do that. The first version only supports Linux, so I'll try that real quick. This is an enrolled device here, you can see here. And the main part that I show here is basically you'll kind of have two more files in the Orbit data directory. This is the SCEP certificate that Fleet issued for this device. And this is the TPM key material. So if I do sudo cat identity, this is like the private key, but it's kind of encrypted. And again, the way this works is like it's awesome because whenever you need to use the TPM to sign, you gotta load this chunk of encrypted bytes into the TPM, and then only the TPM obviously can decrypt it, and then it will use it to sign every request. So you can take these files elsewhere. It won't do anything because you need the TPM, and that's the main part here. So let me show now what this looks like on the traffic. So I have this Fleet server running on ngrok, and I'll get one of the requests here, this OS query request to publish some logs, probably a few queries. The main part here is signature. So this is what the Orbit added to the OS query request, basically signing this body with all the headers and everything with the TPM, and this is the signature. This, for example, has key ID equals 2D, meaning this is the serial number of the certificate. So Fleet will know what certificate to use to validate this signature. If it's not valid, it will just ignore the request and return a 401. All right, I think that's about it. And again, this is happening on Orbit traffic and Orbit traffic. So let's get one. There's no Orbit traffic here, but it also happens for Orbit. And one more thing, it doesn't. So if you go to Fleet Desktop, it's still gonna work as usual. You don't need signed headers for the Fleet Desktop because this token that we see here, to generate a valid token, you need a TPM signed request. So it's like a transitive security. If you don't have a good signature for getting this token, you will not get the one, and then this expires every hour or so. So the user is secure, and you don't need to set up any weird stuff on the browser. Yeah, that's about it. And then the guides. Also, Victor created a great guide. I think it's linked here. Yeah, right here. And yeah, the guide is added here with the new flag that you need to set when building FleetD for either Deb or RPM. You need to set this flag. Obviously, if you don't set any flags, FleetD will behave as usual. But if you set this flag, then this feature will actually do the TPM thing. And then the contributor guide that I was showing, it's a great, awesome guide with all the details. So I encourage everyone to take a look at that. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. Before we go to questions, I want to say that what Lucas said, just the last thing, I hope it is stating the obvious that the regular work of regular TLS is still supported. It's only if you set this flag that it will require both sides to sign the communication. So currently one customer did it. And I think once customers will see that, probably more customers will use it. Like anything good in life, it has a cost. It's definitely taking some cost on the agent side and on the server side for the decryption and everything, but it's a good thing. So thank you, Victor and Lucas, for that. Any questions? Okay. So the next thing will be presented by Dante. When we use GitOps, sometimes we have errors with types on the YAML. Dante did a good work of presenting the right errors for that, and I'll hand it over to you, Dante.
Hey, Sharon, thank you. 1 second, let me share my screen.
Hey, so this is the story. Better error message for wrong types in YAML files. As someone using Fleet's YAML files, GitOps, I want an easy to understand error message when I use the wrong type, so that I can understand how to fix YAML. We can see here in the old branch, when we create YAML files here, for example, one with bad labels, bad macOS settings, and bad policies, we get these very vague error messages. Unmarshal JSON, cannot unmarshal string, We don't know what field it's talking about. We don't know where in the file it is. We don't know what a label spec hosts is. Same here with the macOS settings. And same here with this guy. This is a third-party included file, libselinux. Same problem. We can even take a look at these files. If we look at labels, you can see here host is supposed to be an array and it's a string E. You can see macOS settings. This is not supposed to be an array. And we can see finally with policies. The policies file itself is fine, but the one it loads, Linux, the name is supposed to be string, and we put a number here instead. So if we take out now, we're running the correct version of Fleet. Let's just check it out. Yeah. Just have to log in quickly. There we go. So if we now rerun those commands, fleetctl, ops, f, let's start with the first one. What was it? Bad labels. We get a much clearer message here. Couldn't edit badlabel.yml, which is a file we're dealing with. Host, we get at labels.host, expected type array of string, but got string. That seems pretty clear. We can move on to the next one, macOS settings. You can see here, couldn't edit bad macOS settings.yaml at controls.macOS setup, bootstrap package, expected type string, but got array. And then finally, SELinux, bad policies. Couldn't edit the file name, policies.name, expected type string, but got number. It should provide error messages like this for all different types of unmarshalling situations we have. And I even took the care to make sure that with field names, if we have embedded structs, that it removes the embedded struct and gets make sure it returns only the user visible parts of the path name so that we don't get any user confusion. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. That's it. Back to Sharon.
Thank you, Dante. And I love the keyboard sounds. Should be part of every video. Next, we have a cross-team collaboration between Jacob and Rachel Perkins. A customer codenamed Preston requested this, and I'll let Jacob present it. Take it, Jacob.
Thanks, Jerome. Getting the correct window here. So this is a subtask of a larger story, and the user story there doesn't exactly address this. So and Rachel's going to read it later. So stay tuned for the broader user story. But this is basically, as it says in the agenda, updating software install and uninstall modals pretty much all across the UI, and kind of reorganizing some architecture to make that happen. So this is very much work in progress, but we wanted to show what we've got so far because it is going to be released soon. So basically, in a number of places across the UI, so global activity feed, host details, I don't know why the user avatar is like that. Host details, past and upcoming activity feeds, and my device self-service, as well as some other kind of niche locations like here, are all I've updated the modals and the various informations about software, specifically inventory installs, not to be confused with library additions. So first, let's take a look at this. So I installed 1Password on this machine, and then this is a global activity item, and we get some kind of more detailed information about what was installed, when it happened, and where it happened. And then if we look at the details, we get what it says, the install script output, and the install script itself. The pending state does not show up on the global activity feed because it's not generated an activity yet, but we should have a failed version. Yep, so unsurprisingly, exit 1 fails. And then we look over here on the host details, past activities, and we see the similar modal. So I won't belabor those. They're pretty much the same. And then we've got some kind of a niche situation here where we want to see a slightly different view. We see the versions installed and their paths. And then this is used by that broader modal, which you see here on the self-service page. And Rachel's going to be showing you a lot of updates to this page. It's going to be updated from this view, but this modal is the new work here. So like this is that same versions UI you saw. We see that Fleet installed 1 password, but less details when the end user is looking at it. So on the device user page here, and again, install script output, failed state. Oh, retry is not happening quite yet. And yeah, those are all the states we've got. So again, work in progress, more to come with that. But that's just a preview. I also want to give a big shout out to Marco and Rachel. The story coming in for various reasons was not the clearest, and we were able to really do some great communication and collaboration to clarify what we're going for here. So great teamwork there. Back to you for now, Sharon.
Thank you, Jacob. Any questions? Okay, I'm guessing Rachel will present more as part of the software team. Next, we have a feature that was supposed to start at the beginning of the sprint, but a lot of research was done and a lot of good work with design. Big shout out for Rachel Shaw that worked with Juan and Scott to research this feature. We had to break it though into parts, and we do deliver some of it, part of it this sprint, like the ability to audit things, and some will be delivered fully next sprint. And I'll let Scott present it. Scott, please take it.
All right, thanks, Sharon. So the story that we're talking about here is require BitLocker PIN. As an IT admin, I want Fleet to require a Windows BitLocker PIN so that Fleet Desktop can show a banner that instructs end users to create a PIN that they'll use to unlock their Windows host during startup. Fleet will also report which end users have or haven't created a PIN. This is really interesting. Like Sharon said, we did a lot of research here. Big shout out to Juan and Rachel and Noah on all their work on this too. So BitLocker, as we probably know, is the Windows disk encryption mechanism, and they have an ability to require a PIN to add a PIN to BitLocker so that when your device cold boots, before you even get into like the Windows startup screen where you have your password, there's a PIN to unlock the drive. And the original story that came through was require BitLocker PIN, and there is a mechanism on Windows to actually require this PIN. And what that means is that the drive can't be encrypted until the user sets up a PIN. The challenge there is that it means that if you actually have this requirement set on Windows, which was our original design, then we can't silently encrypt the drives in the background. All that will happen is that we'll send this configuration to the device, and the next time the user logs in, they'll see a notification that says, hey, you need to encrypt your device. Click on this notification and follow this wizard, but they can ignore it, right? And that means that their drive isn't encrypted, which is not ideal. So again, doing a lot of research with the customer that originally requested this, and we found out what they were really doing was um, configuring the devices to allow a pin, which is not on by default. By default, you can't even set a pin for BitLocker. So configuring the devices to allow the pin, and then they were handing out basically a handout to say, hey, you need to go do these steps to set up a pin. So what we came to on our end for this setting is, and I'll demonstrate what we have right now. When you go to the disk encryption page, you have, this is what it looks like today. But when you click turn on disk encryption, you get these advanced options. And under that is require BitLocker PIN. If you click this and you save it, what we will end up doing is sending that configuration to the device in a Windows group policy that unlocks the ability to have a PIN. And then we will start reporting back on hosts that don't have the PIN set. But in the meantime, we'll still be encrypting their drives, so they'll at least have that level of protection. And this action required pending, which currently for Windows is always 0 because we don't report anything for that, we'll start reporting any devices that don't have pins set as action required pending. We'll show on the host details page, we'll show a banner saying that this action is required. And on the My Device page for those folks, they'll see a banner saying you need to set a pin with a modal that pops up some information about it. So as Sharon said, a lot of this was just research. We split this into a bunch of subtasks. This and the video that Sharon will show shortly from Juan were the ones that we got done this time, which is about setting up the configuration and figuring out how to tell from the Orbit side that that a pin has been set or not. And then in the next sprint, we'll kind of bring that all together with determining from Orbit whether this requirement is set and acting on that by setting the global policy or the Windows policy and starting to do this reporting. Any questions on that?
Okay, thank you, Scott, Juan, and Rachel. And as Scott said, I will present a short video from Juan. Hold on one second, let me share it properly. 1 second. Hopefully you hear it good.
Hello, gonna be demoing this new table that was added to FleetD called BitLocker Key Protectors, which is gonna allow us to get what key protectors are set up on a BitLocker encrypted system. So for demoing this, I have a virtual machine here running Windows 11. And I have 2 drives, and you can see that both have BitLocker turned off, right? So if I run this, shouldn't get anything back, right? Because BitLocker is turned off. So let me go ahead and turn this on and set a pin. And sure. So it's gonna start the encryption process. Let's run this again. Okay, and now I get back that the driver, like the mount point C, has 2 key protectors, so value 3 and value 4. And these values here correspond to these enum values here, these variants here. So 3 and 4, it's these two guys here. So TPN and PIN and numeric password. So let's try turning BitLocker on this drive here, which is like a different data drive. And let's try setting up a password. Password. Okay, that's running as well. Now let me run the query again. Yeah, here we go. So we have that data volume, right, as key protector 8, which corresponds to password. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Thank you again. Any questions about the BitLocker? Okay,
So
then.
just to clarify, what we just saw is like we'll be using that table to determine whether hosts have, Orbit will use it to determine whether hosts have pins so that we can report back on their compliance. And that part you saw in the video where he turned BitLocker on and it immediately asked him for a pin, that's what it looks like if you have Windows require the pin. But again, if we do that, it doesn't encrypt the drive. It just pops up a notification on their screen saying you have to go through that wizard that he was showing.
Yeah, good comment. And one more thing to add is that this auditability is part of Orbit, while we typically prefer to put things in OS Query that everyone can have as part of OS Query. This is part of Orbit in the sake of quick releases. Obviously, it's still open source or contribution to humanity, but it's part of Orbit. Okay, and last but not least, we have Jacob again. Jacob, take it.
Thank you, Sharon. I'll just read this user story. The story and the work kind of developed in tandem. This is an extension for our customer, Primo. They have been very clear that they don't mind us saying their name, so I'll just go ahead and say it. So as an IT admin, I want to manage software and policy automations for Node team so that I can use these automations in a Fleet instance in which teams are disabled via Fleet partnerships enable Primo. So in other words, as we all know pretty well, certain capabilities are present are available in the UI to no team, others to all teams, and yet others to teams other than no team. So this work tried to kind of tie all of those together and present a unified user experience that allows all policy automation and software automation capabilities. So I will go ahead and here's a webhook.site, which we'll just see webhooks fired there. And as you can see in the UI, we have no indication of teams. So that's because I'm running the server in Primo mode. But we still have premium functionality. So that's kind of the paradigm we're working with here. And the main feature, well, I'll go ahead and add so sorry, like the user story mentioned, this specific work focused on enabling all policy automations and all software automations. So I'm going to add a policy and show you how the policy automations work here. This will always fail, of course. So we've got this new policy, and we've now got access to our automations. and they've got a single Mac VM enrolled in no team here, dev Mac VM. And what I'm going to do now is associate this failing policy with a script automation, as well as a other workflow webhook automation. Previously, these were not available at the same time. So those have been associated with the policy. Now let's go ahead and refetch our host to get that failing policy. Shouldn't be too long now. I'll just double check the VMs online. Should be, yep, it's right here. Great, so the policy's failed, and now we, if we look at the host details and we fetch it, we'll see that Fleet is now going to run that script on this host. So the script automation works, and if we trigger, oh, that was it. The automations, because I think they run, the cron is every hour or so. We want it to go right now. We see the webhook fire and go to our URL here. So they've got it all now. And then similar for software vulnerability automations. I won't demo that. So that's the main bulk of the work. And then this also allows them to delete. So in the Primo paradigm, we're pretending like all teams doesn't exist, but since earlier customers of theirs might have policies on all teams, we do want to let them still see that those exist and delete them so that they can kind of approach this paradigm. And I'll just play this video here. I think I'm not sharing sound, so I'll just narrate live here. So like I said, here we have 2 policies in Primo mode and then 2 inherited policies, which are technically a buggy state for Primo mode. And we're now going to be able to select those with the checkboxes on the side and delete them, which in the current Fleet UI, you can't edit policies from a different scope than you're currently looking at. So you can't delete, for example, all teams policies when you're looking at a team. And that's the update here. I'll just fast forward to the good stuff. So selecting the inherited teams and deleting one, deleting the current scope, so you can delete teams from any scope, sorry, policies, and you can delete both the inherited and the current scope policy. That wraps it up for this demo. Back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Jacob, and I apologize to Scott. I forgot the robot story, so we can do it now. Scott, as I promised you, because this is watched by billions of people, I will behave and not call it the way we call it in the stand-up, and I will just call it Fleety the Fleetbot. Go ahead, Scott.
First of all, just shout out again to Jacob for working on that story. I know there's been that was a lot. So thank you for working on that stuff. Fleety, okay, so this is something that came out of our hackathon at the offsite. The story that we have right now was, as a Fleet contributor, I want to dog food Fleetbot, Fleet's AI agent, so that I can experience interacting with Fleet via the agent, think about how Fleet can improve it. So what Victor and I built during the hackathon was a Slack bot that you can ask it questions about your fleet deployment, and it should give you some sort of reasonable answers. It consists of two parts. There's this MCP server, or Model Context Protocol server, which provides extra tools to a large language model. So like a classic example is you could give it a get the local weather tool, so that if you ask your LLM, like, what's the weather in Austin, it can say, oh, I have this tool, and the tool says, give it a zip code, and I can go and it'll ask it, and it'll give me data back that I can use, add that to my context, and give you the weather. For our case, for Fleet, our MCP server right now basically mirrors our API. So we created one tool per API endpoint, and you give the tool's descriptions, like the list host endpoint. You tell it, this is a tool that you can use to list the current hosts. Here are the filters that you can use. Here are the parameters. So if you ask the bot, what hosts do I have online, it can say, oh, I have a tool for that. It'll go get the information and reply back. The other part of FleetBot, obviously, is the bot part, which is a Slack bot that we designed to respond when you mention it. So we had this basically on our laptops during the hackathon, and part of this story was to put infrastructure in place to kind of have it online all the time, so that we can start kind of hammering it and seeing what works and what doesn't, and have more people use it. So I can share my different screen here. Google Slack bot. So this is our FleetBot demo channel, which is kind of our sandbox for testing this out. But FleetBot will respond in any channel that you ask it a question in. If you say, like, FleetBot, how many hosts are currently online? Hopefully this will work, because getting this to actually work as a service was kind of a challenge. And it will immediately reply with one of Victor's fun phrases here. And it'll always start a new thread, right? One thing that we changed from the hackathon part, there are currently 42 hosts online in your fleet deployment. This is going off of dog food. One thing that we changed for this is that you have to continuously mention it. Before, it would, as soon as you invited it in, you could not get rid of it. It would answer every chat, and most of our threads have multiple users in them talking to each other. So having it constantly try to answer every chat was not great. So you can say, like, but of those, how many are max? And it should use, again, those different tools to come up with answers for you. One thing that as I was working on this throughout the sprint when I could, trying to get this to be better and better, one thing we definitely noticed is that having a tool per API endpoint is probably not ideal, because, for example, like the host details endpoint gives you this just fire hose of information. So, it's not great right now at parsing that for specific details. So if you say, like, what failing policies does George's laptop have, it is not great at knowing that, it can go from finding the ID of George's laptop and maybe getting the details, but the policies part is kind of hidden under there. So you really want a separate tool almost per screen in our app. So, like, if there's a tab for policies on host details, you probably want a tool for, like, policies on host or something like that. So that's something to workshop. But basically, anybody can kind of hit this now, start banging away at it, see what works, what doesn't. It's an LLM. It's not always great at counting things, so that's something that we can always try to improve. But yeah, it's online. It's got infra behind it that should stay up and reboot and survive restarts. So it doesn't require somebody's laptop to be open all the time. And yeah, that's where we're at. All right, Luke's asking a question. Let's see what it says. It's probably gonna say something like, "Who needs a new toy?" Another thing we could definitely probably improve is, like, maybe animate this or something so it looks a little bit more dynamic, because right now it just sits there and you don't know if it died or not. But one thing we'll never change is this wonderful avatar for Fleety.
I have nightmares with that.
Uh,
I imagine Mike would want a swan of some sort.
it loves to give you like long explanations of why it can't get the information that you want, but I mean, this information does exist. It's a good
Isn't
example.
that always the hardest thing? Like I always start every prompt session with, please give me brief answers.
Yeah, it's the system prompt in this is like be direct and to the point. But as anybody who's worked on these prompts before knows, like the longer the system prompt, the less weight it gives to any individual thing. We spent a lot of time on this one getting it to not try to do Slack formatting that doesn't work, and we probably need to cut back on that in favor of like the kind of answers it gives. But anyways, yeah, at Fleetbot in any channel, any public channel, it doesn't do DMs or private channels right now. And yeah, just kind of give Victor or I or anyone in orchestration feedback on it, and we'll keep working on it. I should say, like the MCP server itself is something I think our customers have been asking for, so they can use that for their own LLM deployments. It doesn't require, like the bot is a fun thing, but it's not required to make this work and be valuable.
Thank you, Scott and Victor, for creating this. And Scott, I don't know if you mentioned, we will post a guide for customers to use that, what's required for them to use that as well. And Luke,
Yeah,
that concludes, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry, the Fleetbot channel, the Fleetbot demo channel, in the description, it shows you what repos it's using, and there's a README in those for setting it up.
Great. Thank you all. Luke, back to you. This concludes the features part.
That was awesome. Great work. The hackathon was largely us asking Fleetbot to respond with different personalities, like grizzled old sailor, which was pretty fun.
Did you try grizzled old systems administrator? I wish you had.
Maybe kind of similar. Who knows? Awesome work, orchestration. Thank you. Some big features shipping for customers, and that's going to be fun to play with. So over to Tim and the software product group for their features.
All right, we have one big feature we've been waiting to get out, and I'm just going to pass it over to Rachel.
Everybody, happy Friday. Yeah, battery condition. My laptop would have shown if it was in dog food, but we're going to move on to this big UI feature that's actually so big, it's 2 stories in one. I created a demo video for both tickets. It's about 2,000 lines of code, and it's pretty interwoven between the two. So you can see in the demo video why everything just ended up on Gabe's review plate. So let's go ahead and watch in 1.25, and then I made a separate video that's more of the limitations and future improvements that we can make on this. So how do I get this edit button off of my there it goes. Nope, now it's editing. There we go.
Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to walk you through 2 related stories that should land in Fleet version 472. So these are mainly front-end improvements to the Fleet desktop service page, as well as the Fleet apps host details software library page. So let's jump right in. The first feature I want to go over comes from the ticket 27983. And the user story is, as an end user of Fleet desktop, I want to be able to see when updates are available for apps I have installed so that I can keep my computer's software up to date. So let me go ahead and open Fleet desktop self-service page from my work computer here. And so this is the view from my work computer. And just to make sure that I have the latest changes, I'm just going to disconnect from my tunnel into my dev environment directly. So here we go. And so right away on the self-service page, you're going to see this new updates card on the top. So now from here, this data is actually powered from the same software API that powers the self-service section down below. And what it does is it compares the current version that is installed on my computer. So for example, Firefox app, my current version is 134.0.2 with the version that is available from the installer. The installer could be from a Fleet maintained app, it could be from the App Store app, or it could be from an uploaded custom package as well. So whenever there's an update available, you'll see it both here at the top, as well as in this install status column here. You can see the 4 updates are down here. And this makes it very clear and easy to know when they should update an app to the current, to stay current. This section is paginated with responsive design. So if there's more than 4 of these, you'll see that there will be buttons to paginate. And then with the responsive design, if you go down some widths, you'll see that there's only 3 and you can do your pagination as well. We will be rolling out lower screen widths in 768 in the future, and that's when you'll see this go down to 2 pages. Sorry, 2 cards per page. So from here, you can update. There's actually 4 updates buttons. So you can update from here, you can update from here, and you can update from the update available modal as well. And then you can click this updates all, which will trigger an update for all 4 of these apps. So let me just go ahead and click an update for, let's do Firefox. And since my host is online, since I'm on my self-service page, you will see this updating status that is pulling the API every 5 seconds to see if an update has completed. It does disable these buttons as well. And you can see it up here as well. So let me go ahead and show you what happens if a host is offline. So I'm going to go to my host details software library. So this is an offline VM of mine. Under software library, you can see, since I clicked on update already, you can see an update pending status when the host is offline with a tooltip that says that it will update when it comes online. So that's the first of the 2 stories. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second ticket, number 30240. So the user story is, as an IT admin, I want to show my end users only relevant actions so that I provide my end users a clear self-service software experience. So let's go ahead and go back to the software self-service page. And so looking at this self-service page, you can see the update section, but we're going to focus specifically on the self-service section down below. This section is important to look at because we made drastic improvements to the install statuses here, as well as the actions here. Awesome. So we can see Firefox is now updated and it shows as installed. Here, which is clickable, and we'll give you more information as well. So let's talk about the new improvements to the status column. So first of all, you can see now that the status column on the self-service page is now sortable. So you can see your failed statuses first if you would like to group them all, or you can see anything that is uninstalled and easily install those as well. Now, the key feedback that we got from IT admins is that this install status used to only show the Fleet status. So that's whether or not Fleet had initiated an installation. So for example, if a end user used this page to install or a admin used the Fleet app to install, that would be the install status. Now with this new feature, this install status is directly tied to OS Query, and OS Query is showing what's actually present on your computer based on real-time data. So what does that mean for you? If a piece of software is installed on your computer, no matter how it got there, it will show up here as installed. This is the new improvement. If a piece of software is not installed on your computer, it will show up with this -- which is our uninstalled state. I'm going to go ahead and show you that on the host details view for an admin user. So looking at my computer, Rachel's Fleet, this is my laptop that I'm using right now. In the software library tab, you can see here that I have previously installed Slack, not using the library. So my installed version is actually more current than my Fleet library version. And so you can see that it's showing up as installed, even though I didn't use Fleet to install this. So this makes the status a lot more accurate and user-friendly. Another thing I wanted to note for both pages is the actions are directly tied to the status. So if something is not installed, you will see an install action with no uninstall button. If something is installed, you will see a reinstall button with an uninstall button if uninstallation is available. If you see a failed button and it's currently uninstalled, then you can retry. If it failed an update, you'll see failed, but it will have the installed version still here and still allow uninstall. So for example, if you had a failed uninstall, you can either reinstall or retry uninstall. So these new buttons here are a little bit smarter than they were before. So altogether, these changes should make it much easier to see what you have installed, what's missing, and what actions are exactly available, which delivers a clearer and more efficient self-service experience for the end user and a clearer and more efficient experience for IT admins on the host details software library page.
So that's the two major tickets, Jacob is currently working on updates to the install and uninstall modals to make them niftier and align them. I'm just going to play the limitations just because I think it's important for us to highlight that there are improvements. This was just like best case scenario that I showed you. And I'm gonna fast forward it because it's kind of painful for me to go through this like for the 30th time testing it. So let me hit refresh again because my Chrome is weird right now. Cool. All right, so we can think of this as the extended version to the demo video that I did, because I wanted to talk about some current improvements and limitations we noticed, and then what we're planning to address. So the first thing I wanted to address is that we are using a lot of these modals on the host details activity feed as well. So if you go down here, you can see like when an end user installs an app or uninstalls an app via self-service on Fleet Desktop, we have these modals, which gives you more information here. And we are currently working on, actually Jacob is actually currently working on improving these to make a more unified experience. One of the improvements we noticed is on the back end that this API is not returning the information of what version is being installed. So this is actually the file name that is showing up here, but the version itself is not a part of the activities API. So that is one improvement here. Another improvement is the front end is using the install API to update apps. And so we have a ticket in the backend to create a separate API for updating specifically. So then we'll also have a separate update activity instead of just showing an installed activity here. Same thing with pending. If you have a pending update, it's going to show as a pending install. Another limitation that Jacob is uncovering is how we handle activities and modals for install and uninstall for App Store apps versus software packages. So he is detangling those and figuring out the ways to improve it to give you a more seamless experience between the two. All right, so moving on, another thing I wanted to note was on the My Device page self-service, particularly on Intel Macs. So my Mac is actually 4 years old that I'm using right now. We noticed a lag kind of race condition between OS query and our apps actually installing. So this was not able to be reproduced by my coworkers, but I reproduced it multiple times, multiple days with multiple eyes. In which case, if you were to install a, a app on here, it automatically shows installing because the backend is recording this as the status is changing to pending install. And then when it finishes installing, you should actually see this here turn to installed. So the way that should work. So the way that this actually works for most hosts is once it finishes installing, it goes from pending to installed. Oh, sorry, it goes from pending to updating the host vitals, which updates the OS query query to find out what your software inventory is. And so once it sees from OS query that the inventory has changed and this app is now in wherever it is, applications folder, wherever, it's going to show that in the installed versions section. So in the background, this is installing, and then it's going to refetch this page from the back end. And once the front end realizes that the page is, the host vitals is done refetching, that's when it's going to recall this API, which is tied to those host vitals for the installed versions. So. So here you could have seen company portal in the network call is now, once it's done, which it is done. So my old Intel Mac doesn't see the installed versions yet, so it looks like it's not installed while it is fetching the host details that was triggered from the backend. Once those host details from the backend come back as refetch is done, it will call the software API and update this table, in which case for mine, it doesn't actually catch on time. So there's a little race condition that we have identified a solution and hopefully we'll be posting up in the next sprint. So once again, here you can see company portal. It says it's not installed according to the API because the refetch kind of had a race condition. So while all these is running in the background to refetch again to see if it updates, I want to talk about one last improvement that we will be making next sprint is these update cards. If there is more than one installed version, depending on the install script or the command, it's only going to update the version that is seen in the application folder or wherever the script is targeted to. So we have certain current issues with, this timed out to 2 seconds. Current issue opened with these cards not actually being removed if there is a lower version installed somewhere else on the machine. So when we create that separate updates API in the backend, we will be addressing that as well, hopefully next sprint.
And I think that's it. All right, so we can think of this as the extended version to the demo video that I did, because I wanted to talk about some current improvements and limitations we noticed.
Okay, cool. And then I think I missed one last thing I wanted to mention for limitations was this is all front end magic happening right now. So hopefully as we start building out separate APIs for all of this stuff, since a lot of it is just running off the host software API, that we will be able to get this install status from the backend. Because right now this thing is currently being built from 3 different things. It's using the status from the API, it's using installed underscore versions array from the API, and it's using whether the host is online or not. So front end magic is actually making this column happen. And yeah, that's the whole feature. So back to you.
Awesome. Claps all around. Big feature, big milestone for us. A lot more to get done. And we're going to get there. So going to pass it back to Luke.
Cool. Thank you very much. And just echoing what everyone is saying in the chat. This is huge. A lot of customers needing this feature to fully transition their software management over, and it's just awesome to see the maturity that we're establishing across the app, and with a special focus on these type of workflows that everyone uses, not just the fleet admins. So some extra care and attention going in there. And I think really shows how difficult it is when you think of all the possible conditions and combinations of conditions that exist that all need to be considered and caught. So great job, Rachel and team on that. So I actually had the chance to contribute something small. So I'm going to show that real quick before we get into bug fixes and improvements. The right stuff, populate fleet control preview with starter scripts, policies, and queries. As a new Fleet user trying Fleet for the first time with a premium license provided by fleetdm.com/tryfleet, I want my Fleet Control Preview instance to be pre-populated with resources like queries, policies, scripts, and teams, so they can more easily understand Fleet's value. So previously we had Fleet Control Preview, which would start a free instance. Of course, you're missing out on a lot of the great features in Fleet if you're only evaluating the free instance. So our Try Fleet page now provides a 30-day license. So anyone can come here and get a fully functional preview of Fleet for 30 days. And previously we were loading our standard query library, which we've had for a while and is a great library of helpful queries, but we preload all of those and it doesn't really look like a real Fleet instance. And it can be a little overwhelming to be presented with 50 queries the first time you open Fleet. And so what we wanted to do is for the preview, and the same thing is being applied for a brand new Fleet instance, is auto set that up in a best practice way based on what we found works best for managing Fleet. So if I go here and run Fleet Control Preview, it should start, preload everything, open, log me in. I have a series of hosts. It even auto enrolls my own local host. So some of the changes you'll see here is we have all of our best practice teams pre-configured. And then our best practice queries and policies for where they go. So we don't recommend policies at all teams level. So if you go to workstations, you'll see policies that are appropriate for workstations. And if you go to servers, we don't have any policies for servers. We do on queries. And then importantly, in controls, you're going to want to do different things based on the team that you're in. And so we can reflect that and just give a more representative example of what a real production Fleet instance looks like and help people on board and start using Fleet sooner. All right. So we have 20 minutes. Won't be able to obviously show everything, but I'll hand off to George to go through the MDM product group improvements and bug fixes.
All righty, we'll be short and sweet. These two items are essentially hard locked on things that Apple currently doesn't have control over when you have a restart during setup experience. So we've updated our guides to recommend that users do not do a restart while they're having their setup experience process running, but we also have guidance on how to get them unstuck in the case where both of these result in failure. Secondly, I want to call out that Sarah did an awesome job taking the list MDM commands, which has been kind of historically performant enough for the small number of customers that we have, but we have a new customer that is currently hammering it with lots of API calls. And she was able to take what was taking, I think, 100 seconds and take it down to 0.14 seconds. So massive improvements on the list MDM commands there. So big flex there. And then Magnus, our newest member on the MDM team, has been crushing it. It's his very first sprint as a full developer, and he's already picking off a lot of the low-hanging fruit here. So just want to call out thanks to everybody on the team.
Cool. And over to Sharon and orchestration for bug fixes and improvements.
Okay. So I'll read it out quickly. From Victor, documentation for Entra ID scheme URL is inaccurate or incomplete. He fixed the documentation. From Lucas, FleetD extensions are not supported on Linux, Windows, ARM64, and they are now supported. Dante, huge list. Do you want to quickly read it out?
I could, but I don't think I'd do anything better than if you just read them out.
Okay.
Line by line. There's a lot to go over.
I'll do it. Okay. Labels based on end users IDP information take 5 minutes to apply, but messaging suggests they work in seconds. So we had a copy that said, wait a few seconds for the information to come, and it actually is minutes. So we fixed that. Another thing, Entra SSO login error when attempting to log into Fleet instance was fixed. IDP username from Entra populated incorrectly. So we take things, we presented it last sprint, I believe. We take fields from the IDP and present them. So there was a bug here presented incorrectly. Another one, host details aren't populated if the URL doesn't explicitly have details in it. Unable to access SSO settings page or edit users if GitOps clears out SSO config, also fixed. Undefined SSO settings in global GitOps config leads to error in generate GitOps. GitOps run fails when there is a label with no host attached to it. These are all things that I'm just reading the problem description, and it was all fixed. When enable software inventory is not defined in GitOps, it gets set to non-default value. Tooltip on webhook log destination is incomplete. Learn more link in SSO settings disabled in GitOps mode, which should not be. And it was fixed. Manage in YAML link. Sorry, manage in YAML link directs differently depending on how GitOps mode repository URL is entered. So thank you, Dante. Huge list of bugs. And then Jacob fixed add missing spaces, a front-end thing. Juan is not here today, but he also fixed a few bugs. Click desktop about Fleet item missing after host is offline and comes back online. This is an agent thing. Race detected at server data store MySQL host test during nightly test. This is a CI thing, and it was fixed. There was a race condition there. Linux host encrypted status showing failure. Sporadic instances of error running config receivers error is panic occurred in receiver component object model. Shim thread has already been initialized. It's too long. Let me see if I can. You know what? I'll skip it for now. And then lastly, Scott added a few bug fixes. Double banner on host details page. There were a few banners saying the same thing. Query editor rejects valid SQL with escape. So we had an SQL query that had escapes in it, which was completely valid, and the front end rejected it, said it's wrong, even though it could be run. Fleet Desktop on Fedora launching Firefox with incorrect Linux context. Okay, this was, if anyone is, I mean, obviously we won't go into each and every one of them, but a lot of things were fixed. If anyone is interested, please go in and check the bugs. And back to you, Luke.
Cool. Thank you, Sharon. That was a marathon, but a good kind with bug fixes. Over to Tim for software.
All right, I'm just going to do a quick summary. If anyone from the software team has any specific things they want to point out, feel free to chime in here. I guess some of the highlights, we've had some contributor fleet maintained apps come in, quite a bit of them. It's been a great forcing function for us to to refine some more processes to make sure those get in faster. So you'll see some more come in soon, and some as well as some unblocking work for other FMAs that will be coming in sooner than that, or probably next sprint, early next sprint. Some style fixes. This one I want to call out in particular. We have Constantine's been doing some great work here in terms of automation, and what this is allowing us to do is update our fleet maintained apps catalog much faster.
Are you intending to share your screen?
Oh, sorry. I can do that. Yes, 1 second here. Thank you.
And I'll run through my fixes when we get there.
Gotcha. All right. So yeah. So here's the FMAs we're chatting about. About 7 came in. Those will probably get into soon. This is the automation. I just wanted to point out it was taking us weeks, sometimes up to 3 weeks to kind of test all the everything, all the updates in the fleet maintained apps catalog. This automation, I believe. This is our first iteration. We're going to do some manual, still some manual process in the short term, but this will get us down to at least daily, if not, and we're going to be shooting for hourly. And so customers will be getting those updates much faster. And also a lot of related FMA work in general. You'll see some of these version mismatches things, so that'll kind of smooth out the experience for what Rachel was presenting today, making sure everything is showing as updatable, everything's a version comparable, at least in the FMA catalog. Actually, Ian, did you want to go through a couple things?
If only I could find my unmute button faster. I will go ahead and share real quick because I have the correct window up. All right. So we've got kind of a edge casey sort of thing where software policy automations couldn't be used on hash only packages if they were declared in software package YAMLs. There were a couple of fixes around software vulnerability counts where we were either showing multiple vulnerabilities, same CVE twice, or showing a higher vulnerability count than was actually the case. This is just some query grouping issues on the database side. On Linux host, we are now filtering out deb packages if you're running some distribution that uses RPMs, or RPMs if you're using a distribution that uses deb packages. We do that on a distribution by distribution basis. If we're looking at something like Arch, you're not going to see either, and if you're looking on generic Linux, you're going to see both. So that way you're not attempting to install incompatible packages. This is within self-service. Did some improvements to software name parsing when you're uploading them as custom packages. there were some issues around the macOS Chrome Fleet Maintained app because that one is not available at a version pin URL from Google. When the app gets added, it's going to pull the latest, and now we have some additional logic to account for that and parse the package, pull out the version number as it's added from the Fleet Maintained app catalog into the Fleet library for your particular Fleet instance. Thank you, Alan, for some updates to MSI uninstall scripts. Actually, he and I both wound up working on the same sort of deal. I had added support for making sure we're using the MSI upgrade code for uninstalling all versions of a particular app rather than just the product code that was on the MSI that you had uploaded. And then Alan added some additional kind of error handling and no restart flag for uninstalls as well. And those extra flags and such have already been pushed out to Fleet Maintained apps that have MSI installers. And this is kind of the other piece of that MSI uninstall work. And lastly, one thing we used to do was modifying package names and version numbers and that sort of thing as software is ingested in certain cases where the data didn't quite match for vulnerability reporting. A while back, we moved that into the vulnerability processing job so that we weren't displaying information that was not necessarily what OS Query was pulling, and we really only needed that for vulnerability processing. With the most recent updates that Rachel was talking through, we now need to be able to talk through or correctly compare versions of software. And there are certain cases where the OS Query reported version is not Symver compatible, so we're not going to be able to compare it, which means we're not going to necessarily be able to patch it later. So we're adding back functionality to, if we really need to tweak version numbers for Symver purposes where it's really obvious what the transformation is, then we will be doing that on software ingestion, starting with this Amazon DCD viewer. And I think we'll add a few others there, and then we have some future work to make sure that that is pulled in via something like the vulnerabilities feed, so that we don't have to take a Fleet release in order to update those transformations. And that's all I've got. Thanks, Tim.
Awesome. Anybody else from the software team? All right, back to you, Luke.
Great. Thank you. No OS Query contributions this sprint, but we do have a PR in review from Zach, so we'll show that off once it's merged. And that is Fleet 4.72. Thank you all for the great sprint and release. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.